You know, for hundreds of thousands of years, we were a species that just didn't stay put. We were always on the move, right? Following the herds, the seasons, the water. We were classic hunters and gatherers. But then something absolutely profound happened. We stopped. We just stopped. We picked a spot and we started to build. And that is the story we're diving into today. The incredible moment humanity created its very first cities.
And look, that brings us to the biggest question of all, the one at the heart of this whole thing. Why? I mean, really, why would we trade the freedom of the open plains for being stuck in one place? The answer you've probably heard your whole life? Well, it turns out it might not be the whole story.
All right, so let's get right into it. The old idea, the one we all learned in school, was pretty straightforward. Agriculture, right? We figured out how to farm, so naturally, we had to settle down to take care of our crops. It makes total sense. But recent discoveries have thrown a huge wrench into that whole theory. What if the main reason we settled wasn't about food for our stomachs, but food for our souls? What if we gathered together not to be near our farms, but to be closer to our gods?
Okay, so to really investigate this mystery, our first stop is, well, it's a place that basically challenges everything you think you know about what a city is. We're heading to ancient Turkey, to a settlement so bizarre, so incredibly unique, that people call it the city without streets. So this place is called Çatalhöyük. It was founded over 9,000 years ago, and at its peak, it was home to, wait for it, 10,000 people. Just let that sink in for a second. 10,000 people living together 9,000 years ago. The big question is, how on earth did they manage it?
Well, this gives us a little glimpse into their lives, and honestly, it's like nothing we can even imagine. Forget streets, forget sidewalks, forget public squares. In Çatalhöyük, the entire city was just one giant, interconnected beehive of mud brick houses. You didn't walk down a street to get home, you walked across your neighbor's roof. Your front door, it wasn't on the ground floor. It was literally a hole in the ceiling that you'd climb down into with a ladder. It must have been this incredibly intimate and maybe kind of claustrophobic way to live.
And it seems like that intense closeness created a really equal society. I mean, archaeologists have looked everywhere, and they found no palaces, no big temples, no fancy houses for chiefs or priests. Every single home is pretty much the same. This has led some people to this pretty radical idea that Çatalhöyük might have been an early example of anarcho-communism. You know, a massive community just thriving for centuries, sharing everything with no obvious rulers. A truly equal society.
And hey, if living literally on top of your neighbors wasn't close enough for you, you also lived right on top of your ancestors. Seriously. Families buried their dead directly under the floors of their houses. And often, they would later dig up the skulls, cover them with plaster to recreate the faces, and then use them in rituals. I mean, life, death, the past, the present, it was all just mixed together in one tiny space.
Okay, so now let's leave the, let's call it unique experiment of Çatalhöyük and travel to a place that feels a bit more familiar. We're talking about the powerful, sprawling city-states of Mesopotamia. These weren't just little settlements, these were the world's first megacities.
And what's just incredible is the timeline. We are talking about a tradition of city building that went on for millennia. Places like Eridu, and Uruk, these weren't just flashes in the pan. Nope, they were these enduring centers of civilization with layers and layers of history just built one right on top of the other. And what did you find right at the heart of every one of these cities? A ziggurat. These were just enormous step temples that completely dominated the skyline. They were the physical and the spiritual center of everything. This constant giant reminder that the city was built to serve the gods. So, you know, that's a huge point for the religion-first theory.
The sheer scale of these places is hard to wrap your head around. A city like Uruk, yeah, the one ruled by the legendary Gilgamesh, had 40,000 people living inside its walls. It was a massive hub for trade, with canals everywhere connecting it out to the farms and the sea. So here, yeah, religion was absolutely central, but so are money and power. The whole idea of a city was definitely getting more complex.
All right, let's shift our investigation a little. We've looked at the buildings, now let's look at the stuff they left behind, the artifacts. What can the things these early city dwellers made, and how they treated their dead, tell us about why they all came together in the first place?
So, over in modern-day Jordan, there's this settlement called Ain Ghazal, and archaeologists there hit the jackpot. They found this treasure trove of really strange statues. We're talking nearly 200 of them, some human, some animal.
But the most haunting ones, the ones with two heads. We have no idea what they mean, but they are absolute proof of a really rich and complex spiritual world.
And this kind of thing wasn't happening in just one place. Half a world away, in what's now Pakistan, at a site called Mehrgarh, the artisans there made only female figurines for 3,000 years straight. 3,000 years. That consistency is just staggering. It really points to this long, stable religious tradition, maybe focused on a mother goddess that was just fundamental to who they were.
But life in these early cities wasn't all equal and rosy for everyone. Let's go back to Ain Ghazal, because we see this really grim division when it comes to death. Some people, the lucky few, got a careful burial under the house, their skulls preserved just like we saw in Çatalhöyük. And most people, they were just thrown into garbage pits with the daily waste. It's heartbreaking, and it's also clear as day evidence of a social hierarchy. The city was already becoming a place that wasn't for everyone. It was for the privileged.
All right, our next piece of the puzzle is a name I guarantee you've heard before. It's a place that's often called the world's oldest continuously inhabited city, famous for just lasting forever and for its legendary walls.
We're talking, of course, about Jericho. And the history here is just dizzyingly deep. We're talking more than 20 distinct layers of settlements, each one built on the ruins of the last. Get this, they built a massive stone tower here a full 1,000 years before Çatalhöyük was even a thing. 1,000 years. They built the world's first city walls. Jericho is just this powerful testament to how sticky the idea of a city was. Once we started building, it seems like we just never wanted to stop.
And guess what we find here again? Yep, the plastered skulls. In Jericho, they decorated them with seashells for eyes, creating these incredibly haunting, almost serene faces that just stare out at you from 9,000 years in the past. It feels like this powerful, ritual connection to your ancestors was a key ingredient, part of the glue that held these early cities together.
Okay, so let's recap. We've toured a city with no streets, we've met the first megacities, we've looked at skulls and mysterious statues. It's time to put all these pieces together. What's the real legacy of these first wild urban experiments?
So we come back to that first big question. Why did we build cities? And the answer, as you've probably figured out, isn't some simple one-line answer. It wasn't just for farming, and it wasn't just for religion. It seems like we built cities for a whole bunch of reasons. To be close to our gods and our sacred places for sure, but also for simple community and security behind big walls. They became hubs for trade, and places where new crafts and brand new ideas could explode into being. I think ultimately we built them to create something that was bigger than any one of us.
I mean, just try to picture it. For almost the entire history of our species, the planet was just natural landscape. These first cities were true monoliths. There's something completely new on the face of the earth. They were like these intense incubators, forcing us to come up with new ways of living, new social rules, and in doing that, they fundamentally changed what it even meant to be human. That impulse to gather, to build, to create, it's so ancient and so deep within us. The city has always been, and maybe still is, humanity's greatest project.
This whole tour of real, buried ancient cities brings me to one final thought. And it's about our obsession with the ultimate lost city, the one that only exists in legend. I'm talking about Atlantis, of course, the myth of the perfect city swallowed by the sea. It's captivated us for centuries, right? And it's really no wonder. We see these bizarre geological formations like the Eye of the Sahara, and our brains just automatically want to see patterns to imagine the ghost of a city there. But the legend of Atlantis is so powerful not because it might be true, but because of what it says about us. The very first real cities were so revolutionary, so absolutely monumental, that the idea of a perfect one, lost forever to time, became one of our most powerful myths. It's a testament to that dream that started, not in legend, but in the real-world mud and stone of places just like Jericho and Uruk.